What is going on, guys? Rewinds here, and in this video I'm going to be bringing you guys my review for Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Manga chapter number 16. So I'm actually pleasantly surprised after reading this month's chapter, because when the initial spoilers came out, I was like, a little bit more neutral ground. I was feeling still a little bit more positive than negative about it, but I'm like, okay, this seems like it's going to be a decent little setup chapter. But at that point, there wasn't too much translated out. But then when I made my full spoilers video, I did say this is sounding better now. So it was seeming like a good setup chapter then. But after actually reading the official version with the official translations, I'm definitely a fan of the chapter. I really like some of the dialogue that was included here, and the official translations definitely, I feel like, help with that. So let's talk about the chapter. I'll talk about what I liked overall and maybe some things that I thought could be maybe a little better. But overall, pretty positive chapter. Let's talk about it. So we do have a Eida color page for this month's chapter, which looks pretty solid. The chapter itself is titled The Singularity of Fate, and that translation was kind of spot on. I'm pretty sure whoever translated it for the spoilers said it was Singularity of Fate, so pretty close, pretty much the same thing. So the chapter did kick off with a Kashin, Koji, and Boruto flashback, and Kashin Koji is pretty much explaining that basic abilities of the Otsutsuki are to be able to fly and to be able to use space-time ninjutsu. And he says that Boruto's had, some of these limited outbursts of these before, but he ultimately won't succeed in controlling them until 6 years from now. So, interesting point already there. He says 6 years from now. Maybe, this is just one of those alternate futures he can see, one of the alternate paths where Boruto makes it to the age of 19, because we also know there are other ultimate futures too where Boruto has fallen to Jura. So this must be another one, and hey, maybe this one that's 6 years from now too is one that Boruto eventually fell, eventually to Jura in, but he was able to get, some sort of control over these abilities, at least in that span. So that was something I thought was interesting to think about. So pretty much what Boruto learned, though, is by assigning chakra to ninja tools and then sensing them, Boruto came up with his own flying Raijin in the future, which is similar to Minato's technique, but not exactly the same. It's a different technique. So Boruto doesn't know the real flying Raijin, but he came up with like a variant of it while he was trying to, learn how to control the space-time ninjutsu. So he figured it out on his own, and pretty much he named it the flying Raijin in honor of Minato's technique, is what I got from it. So Koji does explain, a little bit of the technique more to Boruto, and he says that the most suitable medium for this jutsu will be metal objects. So even Boruto's sword, for example, would work. Hence that scene back in chapter 14 where Boruto did escape the interrogation area and immediately got to his sword and then disappeared again. So if an item's invisible range, the teleportation's more easier and accurate. But if, for example, Koji gave an example of 2 shuriken, one being north, one south, Boruto would not be able to teleport to the exact one per se, because they'll be both out of visible range, for example. And if there's 2 items that look the same, both out of visible range, we don't know which one Boruto will exactly end up, traveling to. So that could be an inconsistency in the technique, and that would make it a little bit inconvenient for him. So the solution Boruto came up to this in that future timeline, or that future where Koji saw Boruto had this, was that he came up with items of various different shapes, and that would allow teleportation to even further intended coordinates. However, further teleporting does require even greater concentration. So, of course, in this span, it just shows you how intense Boruto's training must have really been, because that is, a lot for him to get in that moment for information. he basically just gave Boruto knowledge in a couple of minutes that Boruto would have normally taken years to come up with on his own. So he did give Boruto a shortcut, but Boruto still, of course, has a lot of hard work to put in to actually achieve this, you know? So then we head over to a conversation that Koji and Boruto are having in the flashback, and Boruto is pretty much saying, if you can see, both a good and a bad future, would it be better to inform everyone to move things in a positive direction? Boruto thinks, hey, that would be the smart move, no? But Koji says the more people that know about it, the future, the more the nature of that future will change, because once someone knows about the future, the more one is going to deviate from it, because you can no longer act away before you knew it. So it automatically instills a change. And that would ultimately just make the future a lot more complex for Koji to even predict, hence making his pre-science technique less useful. So the more pretty much what's being said is the more futures one knows, the more one deviates from their regular fate, hence becoming a singularity, a heretical existence that makes the future unstable. And that's pretty much what Koji and Boruto are, and that's where we connect to the title, which I do like the connection to the title. And ultimately, the flashback part of this portion I really did enjoy. I feel like it's a good time to place this kind of stuff right now, because we're pretty much in a transitional phase from the last arc to this next arc. So the kind of chapters we've been getting the last 2-3 months, I feel like have been very appropriate for timing wise and pacing purposes. I feel like if you're going to add them in, you may as well add them in now, and not, in the midst of a battle moment where people are excited to see, the next part of the story happen. So I'm definitely excited to see where we go next month. And of course, I'll talk about that a little more too at the end of this video. But this flashback stuff really cool. I wouldn't be surprised if we get more flashback stuff too down the line with Boruto and Koji. I'm sure there's more to show, but every time we're getting one, I am enjoying them right now. So pretty much the next thing is that Koji ends up saying that it's pretty much better that everyone else doesn't know the future. And again, he's just reiterating that, and that apparently now it's their jobs as the singularity of fates to support the journey for a good future from the shadows. So in a way, Boruto is embracing the shadow role that in a way Sasuke also had as the shadow Hokage. But in this case, it's a little different, but there is a little bit of a parallel there, which I do like. In a way, as part of the shadow Hokage thing that Sasuke did, he wanted to ensure, of course, that the future of the village was safe. And technically, in a sense, Boruto here is going to be doing the same too, by just ensuring that there'll be a good future as events, flow in a certain way. So pretty much, Koji does say that him and Boruto are both a singularity, and that sooner or later, you must be seeing our info too, Eida. So he knows that that's going to happen at some point, which, hey, from the time Koji said that, it took 2 years for Eida to figure that out. So, and I mean, that could be due to a mix of reasons, of course. I mean, she could have checked in on Boruto, I'm sure, and figured out some sort of stuff, but she probably didn't know that Koji was around and that Boruto had allied himself with Koji, so that probably added in more incentive for her to look into it now. We also cut over to Sarada and Sumire now in the present, who are asking Eida what she found out from looking at this, and she responds with that she found out the reason Boruto didn't want to talk much, and that's pretty much that no unnecessary harm will come to you two. So after that, Sarada's asking for Boruto's location, but Sumire says he may not want it to be known. So this segment of the chapter actually is the part where I feel like some people are a little bit more decisive. I want to say since the translations came out, it's been more positive than negative, but I know some people just completely misconstrued this conversation when we had the earlier translations come out, and I know this isn't like everybody's cup of tea, but overall, especially after I read the official translations of this in the actual chapter, I felt like this was a pretty good segment to have, and I'll tell you why. But Sumire is pretty much saying that they have no crucial intel about Boruto, and that's why they've been able to live freely themselves. She says that they shouldn't chase after him right now. So Sarada responds by saying, but Boruto could have died if things had, gone rough, or, pretty much he's been too reckless going up against Shinju alone. And Sumire responds by saying, have you considered the possibility that we got hurt too, though, because we were there? Try putting yourself in Boruto's shoes. Do you think he likes keeping stuff from us? Have you even reflected on his pain? So Sumire is really going in over here. And, a lot of people initially thought that this was more of like a jealousy kind of convo that she was having. But when you read the official translations here in the actual chapter, a lot of what she's saying, like, kind of makes sense. Like, her perspective is definitely, I feel like, a good addition to the chapter because she's playing devil's advocate and she's actually making some good points. And maybe this is going to get Sarada to think a little bit different as well. So she tells Sarada to consider Boruto's feelings a little more, and as well as considers hers too, because she pretty much is saying, I like Boruto, yet you were the first one to jump in and give him a hug so quick. And she understands how Sarada feels too, but what about me? She's pretty much saying that, hey, I was considerate of your feelings, but you weren't were you even considerate of mine? Back then, right in front of me, did you even care about my feelings a little bit? So that's pretty much what she's saying. And in this situation, Eida's even feeling tense. She says she can't even move an inch because the atmosphere is so tense. But at the same time, she thinks this is pretty fun and wants it to continue. Just shows you, what Eida thrives off of. But Sumire ends up saying sorry, and it shouldn't be like this, this kind of situation. Sarada's a little speechless during this time, and then Sumire starts pretty much running out. Sarada yells, wait, class rep, and Sumire responds by saying, how much longer will I still just be class rep to you? So, couple things here. I might even make a separate video on this at some point, talking about a little bit of why this is good for Sumire's character. But in general, I feel like that this is a good conversation for her to be having, just because it shows you a little bit more of her character and where it's at. Going from the pre-time skip Sumire to where we're at now. Because we've had some moments where we've gotten to see, the post-time skip Sarada and like the post-time skip Mitsuki, post-time skip Kawaki. We've gotten to see a lot of people's stances. And of course we know that Sumire probably still likes Boruto, right? But she hasn't had too many big moments yet in these past couple chapters to really be there and speak up like her kind of perspective of whatever might be going on with Boruto, which I think is pretty important because she's one of the only few people that still remembers Boruto for who he was. So I feel like this segment is definitely good because it opens up her perspective, and it'll probably get Sarada to think a little bit different too going forward. So overall, I am a fan of this addition to the chapter. As for the part of her, talking about like, hey, were you even considerate of my feelings? I feel like that's not really a bad addition either. She's just basically saying how she feels about Boruto. But more importantly, I feel like another important point was when Sarada said that, hey, like, wait, class rep, but Sumire responded to that by saying, how much longer will I still just be class rep to you? So I feel like that's one of those indicators of Sumire kind of just saying, when will I be more important to you? And in general, there is a part, if you look back in the earlier chapters, when Boruto met up with Sarada and Sumire, Boruto addressed Sumire still as class rep. Maybe that's a name, that kind of just stuck with her, of course, which we know, but maybe that's something she just doesn't want to be called anymore. She might want to be seen as more than that. So that could be a little point going forward. And honestly, there's some crazy theories already going around. I started seeing this one theory somewhere on Twitter where someone was talking about Sumire possibly becoming, one of these cyborgs because of how long she's spent around Amado, and maybe she'll end up letting Amado do something like that in order for her to become a little bit more useful going forward, and then maybe she'll unlock some crazy shinjutsu or something like that. It was a wild theory, but honestly, you never know with how we're going, what direction we could head in. Like, some crazy stuff could for sure happen. So, but yeah, that's the Sumire portion of it. After that, Shikamaru contacts Eida and says he wants to talk. So they meet up, but there was also a page in there where like the two elders were just getting scolded by the feudal lord for a little bit about not capturing and taking care of Boruto yet. And pretty much after that, Shikamaru met up with Eida. He wasn't a fan of meeting up in person though, because of, his mind not being able to be completely thinking straight. But then again, this was the only way to avoid sensory listening in, so he did that. So he pretty much asked what the status was in the sand, and he did learn that there's a new Shinju born named RYU, and the target seems to be Gaara. And he can apparently undo the seal protecting Gaara because it's based off of Shinki, the Shinju. So that is something to consider. So now that Shikamaru knows of this threat, now I started thinking, okay, we might see some action going forward now of something happening actually in the sand. So Shikamaru says he'll arrange a mission to the sand immediately. Eida tells Shikamaru that she saw some footage from a couple hours ago, not in real time, but one of the Shinju was able to peer at her when she used the Senrigan, and as a result now, she plans on only observing them in past logs, because she doesn't know what the bug Shinju would have done to her if that had continued. Maybe he could have struck. Eida also asked Shikamaru if he helped Boruto escape with Mitsuki, and Eida says, don't play dumb, don't worry about it, I won't tell anybody, as it'll only make things more inconvenient for not only her, but more importantly Boruto. Shikamaru says, huh? But she says, sorry, I was just thinking out loud. So it does tell you again, Eida does, it seems like she feels bad, for what's happened to Boruto, and rightfully so, because the whole thing that happened with her omnipotence ability really messed up Boruto's life a lot. So I feel like this is something that's pretty, important being showcased from her character. So I feel like that was a good little part there. Eida also ends up telling Shikamaru about Boruto and Kawaki's temporary alliance, so Shikamaru shouldn't be interfering really, with that. And Shikamaru asks Eida if she has seen Boruto's mysterious ally. And he pretty much remembers being contacted by Boruto through a toad and ends up just figuring it out himself that the ally may be Koji. And right then a toad appears right on Ida's hair, or like right out of there, and calls Shikamaru very perspective, saying that he'll end up giving some key points to Shikamaru, but doesn't want any questions. He wants 3 individuals sent to the Land of Wind, those being Konohamaru Sarutobi, Sarada Uchiha, and Mitsuki. So he says that either Ryu or Matsuri should appear there, and then perhaps both. You should work with 2 sand ninjas to defeat them. That's pretty much the script that Koji has provided. Shikamaru tries asking why it should be like that, but Koji doesn't want to answer any questions. And he pretty much says that you got to find a plausible reason to send those 3, and also at the same time, you can't let Himawari leave Konoha because she is Jura's target, and she will die if she leaves Konoha. Koji says that Jura does value the cultural values of Konoha, so battle in Konoha is actually against his will. So unless something crazy happens, being in Konoha should be safe for now. So for example, if Jura visits the bookstore in Konoha in the future, he must be interacted with as an ordinary customer. Shikamaru's like, huh, are you serious? And Koji says, yeah, I'm not joking around, and you shouldn't provoke Jura, or your chances of victory, everyone's chances of victory will pretty much be absolutely none. So Jura is just continuously being built up to be a big threat, which I do like because he has that kind of feel to him. He has that big villain kind of vibe and feel, and they're really building him up right now to really be that top dog. So I feel like the advice he gave him after this too was also good, pretty much saying that don't let Jura get involved and kill all his allies with the minimum necessary force, and if Jura appears, run away quickly. So by minimum necessary force, I'm pretty sure he's kind of talking more in the ballpark of no need to go all out with like who you send on these, little missions to attack. And that would just attract, a little bit more attention. So after that, Koji begins to leave, and Shikamaru tells, him to wait. By him, I mean, the Toad, of course. And Koji pretty much says he's deeply thankful for Shikamaru for letting Boruto escape and for following his heart rather than just, the village rules. He says he won't force anything on him and pretty much to keep following your heart to achieve a good future. So that might be a little hint right there. Follow your heart to achieve a good future. Following your heart might be the key, based off what they're saying here, to actually achieve a positive future here rather than just going by what generally is face value. That's kind of what I'm getting from that. After that, Shikamaru just starts up a smoke, and Eida's thinking, follow your heart, huh? And then we get a little panel of Sumire also looking sad, saying, thinking, why did she brought that up anyway, to Sarada? So she's just feeling a little bad of what happened. We then transition to the Land of Wind, where we have Konohamaru, Sarada, and Mitsuki together in the sand. And a pretty cool shot, honestly, we got of them. Konohamaru to the left, Sarada in the middle, and Mitsuki to the right. Honestly, guys, I have high hopes here. These three better all shine in this arc coming up. Like, I want to see all three of them get some shine. I'm not trying to see one of them or two of them get ridden poorly just for one of the others to shine. So hopefully that doesn't happen. In particular, I'm not going to be very happy if we have Konohamaru take a big L for the expense of, like, let's say Sarada looking good. I think Sarada should look good in the fight because that, she's one of the new gen characters that's pretty important, and it's good to show what she's developed throughout the timescape, but I don't think it should be at the expense of the other two. So hopefully all of them are treated pretty well, and hopefully all three of them get some good shine. On a rock above them after that, Yodo and RYU show up, and they pretty much welcome them to the Land of Wind. Konohamaru says, let's head there, and I'm counting on you. They end up going to these coordinates that they were given by Shikamaru, and Konohamaru and Mitsuki are a little bit skeptical about it, but Konohamaru does end up spotting them through his binoculars. Meanwhile, Yodo has a little reunion with Sarada and says that her aura has changed and asks if she's into a guy. Sarada, is a little hesitant, but she says, no. And Yodo says, not like it matters anyway. And that was like a little interaction between them. So Konohamaru pretty much ends up spotting both of them, which seems like it could be the worst possible future that was predicted by Koji, because Koji said it could be RYU or Matsuri or perhaps both. So I guess in a way this is the worst case scenario. And they pretty much see a dead toad, and they think that it's a clue to Boruto. And Konohamaru pretty much says, damn it, there's two of them. And that's where the chapter ends. So next chapter, we should be getting some action, I feel like. So for my action lovers out there, don't worry. We're almost back to that kind of phase of the chapter. Overall, though, I've been enjoying these story chapters. This isn't, to me, as good as what we've gotten, I'd say, in, like, let's say, chapter 14 and 15. But I do feel like, all in all, it still was a good chapter. I'm going to give it probably somewhere in the ballpark of a 7.5 to an 8. Again, somewhere in that good to pretty good realm for me. I'm not going to call it a great chapter, but for a setup chapter, it was some good stuff. And I can see exactly why Ikimoto might have done what he did with this chapter. So, going forward, I feel like we're just going to keep heating up with things. So, it should be cool to see what happens next month. But I'm looking forward to it. Definitely going to make a bunch of videos, I feel like, in the coming, month before the next chapter regarding, some possibilities of things to come. So look forward to that. But that's going to wrap up my video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the review. If you guys did, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you guys are new. And as always, I hope you guys have a good day or night whenever you guys are watching this video. I'm Rewinds, and I'm out.